Scout Commander Xylo had seen many strange things in his 300 years of service to the Galactic Imperium. He had mapped unknown star systems, discovered new forms of life, and catalogued dozens of primitive species. But nothing prepared him for what appeared on his scanner that day. His ship drifted near the edge of the Orion Spur, a quiet region of space where nothing important ever happened. The Imperium had surveyed this area 3,000 years ago and found only one species worth noting. They were called humans, and back then they were barely using metal tools. The report said they would need at least 10,000 more years before they could leave their planet. The scanner beeped. Xylo looked at the screen and froze. An energy signature, not natural, not imperial, something new. He pressed a button and zoomed in. A ship appeared on his display, but what a strange ship it was. Xylo had studied every known species and their vessels. All of them followed the same basic rules. Ships were symmetrical. Ships were efficient. Ships looked like tools built for a purpose. This ship looked wrong. One side was different from the other. It had marks and symbols painted on its hull. Parts of it seemed to serve no clear function. Xylo ran the design through his computer, but the machine could not identify it. He opened a communication channel. His translator crackled for a moment, searching for the right language patterns. A voice answered. It spoke in a strange accent, but the words were clear. This is the UNSS Endeavour of the United Nations Space Service. We come in peace. XYL checked his records. United Nations. Humans, the primitive tool users from 3,000 years ago. Impossible. I am Scout Commander Xylo of the Galactic Imperium. Your species was not expected to achieve space travel for many thousands of years. How did you build a faster-than-light drive? The human captain laughed. It was a warm sound, friendly. We worked hard. Took us a while, but we got there. Would you like to come aboard and talk? Xylo was trained for first contact situations. The protocol was clear. Board the vessel. Inspect their technology. Determine if they posed any threat to the Imperium. I request permission to dock and conduct a standard inspection of your vessel. There was a pause. Then the human spoke again. And this time the voice sounded embarrassed. That might be a bit awkward. Our interior design choices are they are very human. It might be culturally confusing. How about we meet at a neutral station instead? Xylo felt a spike of concern. What were they hiding? Every species in the Imperium welcomed inspections. Their ships were identical inside and out. Clean, efficient, perfect. He took detailed scans of the vessel and sent them back to Imperial headquarters. Then he agreed to meet the humans at a nearby trade station. 3 days later, Xylo stood in a conference room with 5 other Imperial commanders. They all stared at the holographic image of the human ship rotating slowly in the air. This makes no sense. Admiral Cretan was the oldest officer in the room. He had fought in 17 wars and designed 6 classes of warships. Look at the hull. It is not symmetrical. The weight distribution is all wrong. And what are these markings? Decorations. Xylo said art. They called it. The humans painted their ship. The room fell silent. No one painted their ships. Ships were tools. You did not decorate a tool. Master Engineer Vorath stepped closer to the hologram. He pointed at a section near the back of the ship. This area here. The scans show it is filled with plants. Living plants. Inside a starship. Another commander, a Krellian named Sharks, made a dismissive gesture. They must be carrying supplies. Food stores. Vorath shook his head. No, the plants are growing. They have a garden on a diplomatic vessel. And here, Silath pointed to another section. This appears to be a recreational facility. The humans confirmed it is a place where the crew exercises and plays games. Games. Admiral Cretan looked disturbed. On a ship designed for deep space exploration. Yes, sir. They also have something called a mess hall. It is larger than our entire crew quarter section. They use it for eating meals together and socializing. The commanders looked at each other. Imperial ships had feeding stations. Small, efficient spaces where crew members consumed their nutrient packs quickly before returning to work. The idea of a large room just for eating together seemed wasteful. Voreth ran calculations on his data pad. According to my analysis, the human ship is 34% less efficient than our optimal design. They are wasting massive amounts of space on crew comfort. Admiral Cretan nodded slowly. Then they are not a military threat. Any species that designs ships this poorly cannot compete with Imperial engineering. We will welcome them to the Imperium as a minor member species. They can learn proper ship design from us. But Xylo was not so sure. He had met the human captain. The woman had been confident, relaxed, and sharp. Her crew seemed happy. Every Imperial crew he knew was stressed, efficient, and tired. Something about this did not add up. Sir, perhaps we should learn more about why they design ships this way before we dismiss them. Admiral Cretan waved his hand. There is nothing to learn. Efficiency is efficiency. We have perfected starship design over 50,000 years. These humans are simply too primitive to understand proper engineering. Dismissed. The commanders filed out of the room, but Xylo stayed behind, staring at the hologram of the strange human ship. Something told him the Imperium was making a mistake. Something told him these humans understood something important that the Imperium had forgotten. He just did not know what it was yet. 6 months passed. The Galactic Imperium invited humanity to send more ships for cultural exchange. 12 human vessels arrived in Imperial space. Admiral Cretan decided to inspect them personally. What he saw shocked him more than the first human ship. Each ship was completely different. One looked like an earth creature called a shark. Another had huge windows along its entire length. A third was painted in bright colors with words in human languages covering the hull. The largest ship, a military vessel called the UNSS Indomitable, had an image of a human female on its nose and the words Death's Mistress painted in red. Admiral Cretan called an emergency meeting of his war council. Every military expert in the Imperium crowded into the Great Hall. The holographic displays showed all 12 human ships rotating slowly. This is unprecedented. The Admiral's voice was tight with concern. In 50,000 years, we have never encountered a spacefaring species with such chaotic design philosophy. Master Engineer Voreth stood at his station reviewing data. My team has analyzed every human vessel. No two are identical. They use different hull configurations, different weapon placements, different interior layouts. It is as if each ship was designed by a completely different species. A young officer named Telix raised her hand. Sir, I studied the old records. Every known civilization follows the same development path. First, they build many different ship designs. Then, through trial and error, they discover the optimal design. After that, all their ships look the same because that design is the most efficient. Exactly. Voreth nodded. We and the Imperium discovered perfect symmetry 200,000 years ago. The Krellian Empire found it 100,000 years ago. The Venturi discovered it 50,000 years ago. Every species reaches the same conclusion because physics does not change. So why have the humans not reached this conclusion? Admiral Cretan asked. Voreth pulled up a detailed scan. Because they prioritize the wrong things. Look at this. The UNSS Indomitable has a room full of exercise equipment. It has a library with physical books. It has a cafeteria that can seat 200 crew members at once. It even has something they call an observation lounge with comfortable chairs facing large windows. The council members murmured among themselves. Imperial ships had none of these things. Crew members exercised in their personal quarters using standard equipment. Information was accessed through datapads, not books. Meals were eaten quickly at feeding stations. And why would anyone need to look out a window in space? There was nothing to see but stars. Commander Xylo, who had first encountered the humans, spoke up. I have reviewed their historical records. The humans spent 3,000 years traveling in space before they developed faster-than-light technology. All of that time was spent on slower ships, traveling for years or decades at a time. So ask sharks, the Krellian commander. So they learned to design ships for long-duration missions. They built their vessels around crew comfort and mental health. They discovered that happy crews perform better than stressed crews. Sharks laughed. That is primitive thinking. Modern crews are professionals. They do not need to be happy. They need to be efficient. Admiral Cretan agreed. The Imperium has refined crew training for millennia. Our personnel are capable of operating at peak efficiency for months at a time. But Xylo persisted. Sir, I spoke with several human crew members. They stay on their ships for years at a time. Some of them consider their vessel to be their home, not just their workplace. Home. Vorath looked confused. A ship is a tool. You do not live in a tool. The humans do. Silo pulled up an image of the UNSS Endeavour's interior. Look at this corridor. The walls have paintings, art created by crew members. And here, this is a personal quarters. It has pictures of family, books, plants, personal decorations. Each crew member's room is different. The council stared at the images. Imperial quarters were identical. Each room had a bed, a storage unit, and a workstation. Nothing more. Personal items were kept in the storage unit when not in use. The idea of permanently displaying personal decorations seemed strange. This is inefficient. Admiral Cretan said firmly, the humans are wasting resources on unnecessary comfort. When they face a real military challenge, they will realize their mistake. Vorath ran final calculations. According to my analysis, if the humans removed all non-essential systems and redesigned their ships according to optimal specifications, they could increase their efficiency by 42%. Admiral Cretan nodded. We will send them our recommendations. As a gesture of goodwill, we will share our ship design principles with them. In time, they will see the wisdom of our approach. But that night, Xylo could not sleep. He kept thinking about the human captain he had met. She had been confident, alert, and creative in her thinking. Her crew had been energetic and enthusiastic. Every Imperial crew he knew was competent, but exhausted. He accessed the human ship designs again and studied them carefully. The more he looked, the more he understood. The humans did not design ships to be efficient. They designed ships to be homes. They built communities that could travel through space. Every human ship was unique because every human crew was unique. The ship reflected the personality and culture of the people who lived in it. The decorations were not wasteful. They were reminders of why the crew was out here in the dark between stars. They were connections to home, to family, to purpose. The Imperium had optimized everything. They had created the perfect war machine. But somewhere along the way, they had forgotten that ships were not just machines. Ships were crewed by living beings with emotions, needs, and dreams. Xylo wrote a report suggesting that the Imperium study human crew psychology before dismissing their design philosophy. He submitted it to Admiral Cretan. The Admiral rejected it. Efficiency was efficiency. The Imperium had perfected starship design. There was nothing to learn from a species that put gardens and game rooms on their warships. But Xylo suspected that the Imperium was wrong, and he feared they would discover their error too late. 1 year after first contact, the Galactic Imperium hosted the Grand Exhibition. It was the most prestigious event in known space. Every space-faring civilization brought their finest vessel to display their technological achievements. The Imperium sent the Star of Victory, a massive dreadnought that represented 200,000 years of refined engineering. It was perfectly symmetrical, gleaming silver, and identical to every other Imperial dreadnought in the fleet. That was the point. Perfection meant no variation was needed. The Krellian Empire brought the Fang of Dominance, a sleek warship that looked almost identical to the Imperial dreadnought. Different species, same optimal design. The Venturi coalition presented the perfect harmony. Another symmetrical vessel that varied only slightly from the other displays. Then humanity arrived. The UNSS Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and every scanner in the exhibition locked onto it. The ship was massive, nearly as large as the Imperial dreadnought. But there, the similarity ended. The hull was painted dark grey with sections of bright red. On the nose, a large image of a human woman in old-fashioned clothing smiled out at the stars. Below her, the words Death's Mistress were written in letters 10 m tall. The armor plating was clearly from different sources. Some sections were darker than others. Some had markings from previous battles. The ship looked like it had been built from spare parts and decorated by artists. Admiral Cretan watched from the command deck of the Imperial exhibition platform. Next to him, Ambassador Thiel of Krelian laughed out loud. "This is what the humans bring. That monstrosity? It looks like a cargo hauler that was attacked by a paint factory." Other ambassadors smiled. The Venturi delegation whispered among themselves. The humans had embarrassed themselves in front of the entire galaxy. The human captain, Commander Sarah Chen, docked at the platform and walked into the reception hall. She wore a crisp uniform and smiled warmly at the assembled dignitaries. "Thank you for inviting humanity to this prestigious event. We are honored to share our ship design with you." Ambassador Thielch could not contain himself. "Commander Chen, I must ask, why did you bring such a poorly designed vessel? Surely, humanity has ships that are more presentable." Commander Chen's smile did not waver. "The Indomitable is one of our finest vessels. She has served for 12 years and completed 37 deep space missions. Her crew considers her the best ship in the fleet. But the design," Delrich gestured at the holographic display. "It is asymmetrical. The armor is mismatched, and those decorations are highly unprofessional." Chen looked at the Krelian ambassador for a long moment. "The decorations tell a story. The woman on the nose is called a pin-up girl. It is an old Earth tradition. She represents home and hope. The red armor sections are from the Battle of Titan, where the Indomitable saved a colony ship. The crew voted to keep those plates as a reminder. Every mark and scratch on that hull represents a mission completed and crew members brought home safely." The hall fell silent. Admiral Cretan stepped forward. "Commander Chen, the Galactic Imperium has studied your ship designs extensively. We calculate that they are 34% less efficient than optimal specifications. We mean no disrespect, but perhaps humanity could benefit from our engineering expertise." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate the offer, Admiral, but I wonder if efficiency is being measured correctly. Would you be willing to conduct a test?" "A test? What kind of test?" "A simple comparison. Your best ship against mine. We run the same combat maneuvers, the same emergency drills, the same system checks. Then we compare the results." Ambassador Thiel laughed again. "The Fang of Dominance accepts your challenge. This will be educational for the humans." The next day, both ships moved to the testing range. Observers from every major civilization watched the displays. The Krelian Fang of Dominance was a beautiful sight. Every line perfect, every system optimized. It represented 100,000 years of engineering excellence. The UNSS Indomitable looked rough and strange next to it. The test began. Both ships ran through complex maneuvers. Emergency engine starts, rapid direction changes, simulated weapon targeting, system recovery drills. The Krelian ship performed flawlessly. Every maneuver was executed with perfect precision. The crew worked like a machine. The human ship was different. The maneuvers were not quite as precise, but they were faster, 15% faster. Admiral Cretan frowned at the results. "How is this possible? The human ship is less efficient by design." Commander Xylo, who had been studying the data, spoke up. "Sir, look at the crew response times. The Krelian crew is operating at expected efficiency levels. The human crew is operating above expected levels." "Above expected levels? That is not possible. Crews operate at their training level normally." "Yes. But sir, I reviewed recordings from inside the human ship. During the rest period between tests, their crew was relaxed. Some were exercising. Some were eating together in their mess hall. Some were reading in their library. They appeared to be enjoying themselves. So they were not stressed. The Krelian crew spent their rest period in their quarters following standard recovery protocol. They rested efficiently, but they did not relax. The humans actually relaxed. Admiral Cretan stared at the data. A relaxed crew performed better than an efficient crew. It made no sense, but the numbers did not lie. The final test was a simulated combat scenario. Both ships had to respond to a surprise attack while conducting repairs. The Krellian ship reacted quickly. The crew followed their training perfectly. They scored well. The human ship reacted faster. But more than that, they improvised. When one system failed, they ruled power in a way that was not in the standard manual. It worked better than the standard approach. Commander Xylo watched in amazement. They are thinking creatively under pressure. Our crews follow the manual. Their crews are comfortable enough to innovate. The final scores appeared on the display. The UNSS Indomitable had won every category. The exhibition hall was silent. Ambassador Thiel stared at the results in disbelief. Commander Chun smiled politely but said nothing. Admiral Cretan stood slowly. He looked at the rough, decorated, asymmetrical human ship on the display. Then he looked at his own perfect, identical, efficient fleet. For the first time in his 300 years of service, he wondered if the Imperium had made a terrible mistake. News of the exhibition results spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The humans, with their strange decorated ships and inefficient designs, had defeated the Krellian Empire in front of everyone. Within weeks, questions began arising in civilizations throughout known space. The first crack appeared in the Venturi coalition. A young engineer named Ryu served on the cruiser Eternal Silence. He had watched the exhibition tests and could not stop thinking about them. One night, working alone in his quarters, he made a decision. He accessed the ship modification database and submitted a request. He wanted to add a small observation lounge to the forward section, just one room with windows and comfortable seating where crew members could look at the stars. His captain rejected the request immediately. This is inefficient. Space is allocated according to operational requirements. They built communities aboard their ships. This reduced stress and increased performance. A council member objected. But our crews are trained to handle stress. Stress is part of space travel. Thera shook her head. Yes, our crews can handle stress, but they perform better without it. The humans proved this. A crew that feels at home, that has time to relax, that sees their ship as a community rather than a workplace, that crew will outperform a stressed crew every time. Boratha's final conclusions were even more dramatic. Human ships are not just war machines. They are symbols of culture and identity. Every ship is unique because every crew is unique. The decorations, the personal spaces, the communal areas, these are not inefficiencies. They are the foundation of crew cohesion and morale. He paused and looked around the room. We and the Imperium built the perfect machine. The humans built a home that can fight. In our pursuit of mechanical perfection, we forgot about the living beings inside those machines. The Science Council's report was classified immediately. It was too dangerous. If Imperial crews learned that they were being pushed beyond healthy stress levels in the name of efficiency, morale would collapse. But the report leaked within weeks. Every major news service in the Imperium had copies. Engineers read it. Psychologists read it. Most importantly, crew members read it. Admiral Xylo sat in his office and watched the news reports. Across the Imperium, crews were demanding changes. They wanted observation lounges. They wanted better living quarters. They wanted to be treated as people, not as components of a machine. He thought about his own ship, cold, efficient, perfect, empty. He opened a communication channel to Commander Sarah Chen of the UNSS Indomitable. Commander Chen, this is Admiral Xylorth. I have a question. How did your species figure this out? How did you know that ships should be homes? Chen smiled on the view screen. We did not figure it out, Admiral. We just never forgot. When you spend years in the darkness between stars, you need more than a job to keep you going. You need a reason to be there. You need community. You need home. She paused. Your people forgot that somewhere along the way. You got so good at building machines that you forgot you were building them for living beings. Xylo closed the channel and sat in silence. The Imperium had 200,000 years of technological advancement. But humanity had remembered something far more important. Ships were not just tools. They were homes, and that made all the difference. Fleet Master Gornath was the most decorated officer in the Imperial Navy. He had commanded fleets for 150 years. He had never lost a battle. He had never questioned Imperial doctrine. When younger officers began talking about human ship design philosophy, he dismissed it as foolishness. When the Science Council's report leaked, he called it propaganda. When Admiral Cretan suggested studying human methods, Gornath refused. The Imperium has perfected warfare. We do not need lessons from a species that paints pictures on their warships. But the debate would not die. More and more officers were questioning traditional methods. The Fleet Command decided to settle the matter once and for all. They would arrange a training exercise. Gorn's flagship, the Imperial Fist, would face a human vessel in simulated combat. Gorn accepted immediately. He would prove that Imperial efficiency was superior to human sentimentality. The humans sent the UNSS Defiant, a heavy frigate. It was smaller than the Imperial Fist, but fell into the same class for combat purposes. When Gornath saw it on his scanners, he laughed. The human ship had a section along its spine that appeared to be a greenhouse. Glass panels protected rows of growing plants. The hull art depicted Earth's ocean, complete with fish and coral. On the side in large letters, it read, "Home is where the ship is. This will be easy." Gorn turned to his crew. "Prepare for standard combat protocols. We will finish this exercise in under 6 hours." The exercise rules were simple. Both ships would engage in simulated combat for 3 days. All weapons were computer simulated. All damage was calculated by neutral observers. The ships could not actually harm each other, but the computer would track who would have won in real combat. Day 1 began at dawn. Both ships launched from their starting positions. The Imperial Fist executed perfect tactical maneuvers. Gornath's crew operated like a precision machine. Every command was followed instantly. Every system performed at peak efficiency. The human ship responded differently. Their maneuvers were good, but not perfect. They made small mistakes. They improvised, but they were fast. After 8 hours of combat, the computer declared the engagement a draw. Gornath was irritated, but not concerned. His crew had performed flawlessly. The humans had simply gotten lucky. Both ships took a rest period. Gornath watched the human vessel on his monitors. Through the windows, he could see crew members moving around inside. They appeared to be eating together in a large room. Some were exercising, others were tending the plants in the greenhouse. "They are wasting time." Gornath shook his head. "My crew is resting efficiently in their quarters. The humans are playing games." Day 2 started the same way. More combat simulations. More perfect performance from the Imperial crew. But Gornath noticed something. His crew's response times were slightly slower than yesterday. Not much, just 2 or 3%. Within normal parameters for extended operations, the human crew's response times had not changed. They were still performing at the same level as Day 1. By the end of Day 2, the human ship had a slight advantage in the overall scores. Gorn reviewed the data carefully. His crew was getting tired. The stress of maintaining perfect performance for hours on end was wearing on them. The human crew did not appear stressed at all. During rest periods, they gathered in their mess hall and ate meals together. They held what appeared to be a movie screening in a recreation room. Some crew members were reading books in a small library. Gornath sent a message to his officers. "Push harder tomorrow. We need to maintain peak performance. The crew will rest more efficiently tonight." Day 3 was the final test. Both ships engaged in a massive simulated battle with multiple opponents and changing conditions. This would test crew endurance, creativity, and leadership. The Imperial Fist crew was exhausted. They had been operating at peak efficiency for 2.5 days. They were trained for this, but training could only do so much. Response times dropped to 15% below optimal. Mistakes began appearing. Small errors that would not matter in a short engagement, but could be fatal in extended combat. The human crew was alert and energetic. They moved quickly and confidently. When unexpected situations appeared, they improvised solutions. When systems failed, they found creative workarounds. Their response times remained steady. By noon, it was clear that the human ship was winning. By evening, the computer declared the exercise over. The UNSS Defiant had achieved a decisive victory. Gornath sat in his command chair and stared at the final scores. It was not possible. His crew had trained for years. They were the best the Imperium had to offer. How had they lost to a ship with a garden and a library? The human captain, Commander Marcus Webb, sent a message. Good exercise, Fleet Master. Your crew fought well. We would be honored if you would join us for dinner aboard the Defiant. Gornath almost refused, but protocol required a formal conclusion to the exercise. He agreed and took a shuttle to the human ship. When he stepped aboard the Defiant, he was shocked. The corridors were wide and well lit. Art hung on the walls. Plants sat in planters at regular intervals. The ship felt alive. Commander Webb greeted him warmly. Welcome aboard, Fleet Master. Please join us in the mess hall. The mess hall was enormous. It could seat at least 150 people. Real wooden tables filled the space. The smell of cooking food came from a kitchen area. Crew members sat together talking and laughing. Gornath was led to a table where the senior officers sat. They served him actual food, not nutrient packs. Fresh vegetables from the greenhouse. Bread baked that morning. It tasted better than anything he had eaten in years. The human officers were cheerful and relaxed. They joked with each other. They asked Gornath about his career and listened with genuine interest. Finally, Gornath asked the question that had been bothering him. How did you win? My crew is better trained. My ship is more efficient. By every standard metric, we should have defeated you. Commander Webb smiled. Your crew is excellent, Fleet Master, but they are exhausted. 3 days of peak performance burned them out. My crew is also tired, but we are not exhausted. We took real breaks. We ate good food together. We relaxed in our garden. We watched a movie. We remembered why we are out here in space. We did not just operate efficiently. We lived. Gornath looked around the mess hall. The crew was finishing their meals now. Some were cleaning up. Others were heading to the recreation areas. Everyone looked content, happy even on the Imperial Fist. His crew was probably in their quarters right now, alone, resting efficiently, preparing for the next assignment. Webb continued. The Imperium builds incredible machines, Fleet Master. But you forgot something important. Ships are not just crewed by professionals. They are crewed by people. People need more than efficiency. They need community. They need comfort. They need home. Gornath stayed on the Defiant for 3 hours. Webb gave him a tour. He showed him the greenhouse where crew members grew vegetables and flowers. He showed him the library where people read and studied. He showed him the observation deck where crew members sat and watched the stars. Everything was clean but lived in. Personal touches everywhere. Photos of families, paintings created by crew members. A bulletin board with messages and jokes. When Gornath returned to the Imperial Fist, his ship felt cold and empty. He walked through the identical corridors, past the identical quarters to his own sparse cabin. He sat down and wrote his report. The humans did not defeat us with superior technology. They defeated us by remembering what we forgot. They built a home that can fight. We built a machine that cannot rest. Recommendation: the Imperial fleet should study human methods immediately. We have been wrong for 200,000 years. He sent the report to Fleet Command and sat in his cold, efficient cabin, wondering what his ship could have been if they had built it differently. 5 years after first contact, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Imperium shipyards, which had produced identical vessels for millennia, now created ships with variation. Not complete redesigns, but small changes. A viewing lounge here, a communal dining area there, personal quarters that allowed customization. The changes started slowly after Fleet Master Gornut's report. The Imperial High Command ordered a pilot program. 3 ships would be retrofitted with human-style crew spaces. The results would be monitored. Within 6 months, those 3 ships showed a 20% improvement in crew performance. More importantly, crew retention improved. Personnel requested transfers to the modified ships. Morale reports showed dramatic positive changes. The High Command expanded the program. More ships were modified. New vessels incorporated crew comfort features from the design stage. Engineers who had spent their entire careers optimizing for mechanical efficiency now studied psychology and community design. Master Engineer Vorath, who had initially dismissed human methods, became their biggest advocate. He designed a new class of Imperial cruiser that included gardens, recreation facilities, and spacious living quarters. He called it the Unity class. This ship is not just a weapon. It is a community. A crew that lives well will fight better and think more clearly than a crew that merely survives. Other civilizations followed. The Krellian Empire, embarrassed by their defeat at the exhibition, studied human designs intensively. The Venturi Coalition made crew comfort a priority in all new construction. Even the isolated Dranthe Collective, who had always built the most austere ships in the galaxy, began adding small amenities. The most dramatic change happened in military doctrine. For thousands of years, war colleges taught that extended combat required rotation of exhausted crews. Human philosophy proved otherwise. A comfortable crew could maintain peak performance far longer than a stressed crew. New Imperial warships included meditation rooms, exercise facilities, and even entertainment centers. Ships that once housed crews for 3-month deployments now supported year-long missions without crew degradation. But the changes went deeper than ship design. The entire culture of the Imperial fleet shifted. Officers who had been trained to see crew members as components of a machine now learned to see them as people. Leadership courses added sections on morale and community building. Admiral Xylo, who had first encountered humanity, became the head of the new Fleet Reformation program. He traveled across the Imperium, teaching officers the lessons humanity had taught him. A ship is not a tool. It is a home. Your crew is not a machine. They are people with needs, dreams, and emotions. Take care of them, and they will perform beyond what you thought possible. The most visible change was cosmetic, but significant. Ships began showing individuality. Crew members were allowed to add personal touches. Not the wild decorations of human vessels, but small variations. A sculpture here, a mural there, names and symbols that meant something to the crew. Fleet Master Gornut's ship, the Imperial Fist, underwent the most dramatic transformation. After his experience aboard the Defiant, Gornuth personally oversaw the renovation. The mess hall was expanded. A greenhouse was added. Personal quarters were redesigned to allow customization. Most significantly, Gornuth allowed the crew to vote on hull art for the ship. They chose a phoenix rising from flames. Below it, in 6 different languages representing the species serving aboard, were the words, "Never too late to change." When other fleet masters saw this, some were scandalized, but most were curious. And when the Imperial Fist's performance scores increased by 18%, criticism stopped. 5 years after first contact, humanity sent the UNSS Endeavour back to Imperial space for a formal treaty signing. The same ship that had first confused Scout Commander Xylo now arrived as an honored guest. The ceremony was held on the Imperial home world. Representatives from every major civilization attended. Admiral Cretan, now the eldest member of the High Command, gave the keynote speech. 5 years ago, we met a species that challenged everything we thought we knew about starship design. We dismissed them as primitive. We calculated their methods to be inefficient. We were wrong. He paused and looked at the assembled delegates. The Galactic Imperium has existed for 200,000 years. In that time, we perfected the art of building machines. But we forgot why we built those machines. We forgot who they were for. Humanity reminded us. They showed us that true efficiency is not about perfect engineering. It is about understanding the people who operate those perfect machines. A happy crew will always outperform a miserable one, no matter how good the ship is. The Imperium built machines of war. Humanity built homes that could fight. We optimized for everything except the most important factor, the well-being of our people. In our pursuit of perfection, we forgot what we were fighting for. Humanity never did. He gestured to the windows where ships from dozens of civilizations orbited the planet. Look at our fleet now. Every ship is different. Every vessel reflects the personality of its crew. We finally understand that this is not weakness. It is strength. Today, we sign a treaty not just of peace, but of mutual learning. The Galactic Imperium thanks humanity for teaching us what we had forgotten. You gave us back something we lost thousands of years ago. You reminded us how to build a home among the stars. The ceremony concluded with the signing. Commander Sarah Chen, now promoted to Admiral, signed for humanity. Admiral Cretan signed for the Imperium. Representatives from 20 other civilizations added their marks. Afterward, there was a reception aboard a newly commissioned Imperial vessel. The ship was called the New Beginning. It was built from the start with human philosophy in mind. Large windows looked out at the stars. A central garden provided fresh air and a peaceful gathering space. The mess hall could seat 300 people around comfortable tables. Admiral Chen walked through the ship with Admiral Xylo. She smiled at the changes. You have done well. This ship feels alive. Xylo nodded. We learned from the best teachers. But I must ask, when your species first achieved spaceflight, did you consciously decide to build ships this way, or did it happen naturally? Chen thought for a moment. It was natural. Our early ships were slow. Journeys took years or decades. We had to make them livable or people would go insane. We built communities because we had no choice. When we developed faster engines, we kept the same philosophy because it worked. We never saw our ships as just vehicles. They were always homes. Xyl stopped at a window and looked out at the gathered fleet. Ships from the Imperium, Krelian, Venturi, Dranthi, and a dozen other civilizations floated together. Each one now showed signs of individuality. Each one had been touched by human philosophy. We built empires. You built homes. In the end, the homes were stronger. Chen joined him at the window. Not stronger, just different. You had efficiency. We had community. Now we all have both. The two admirals stood in silence, watching the fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds, each one unique, each one a home to its crew. The galaxy had changed, not through conquest or war, but through a simple idea. Take care of your people, and they will take you to the stars. A week later, the combined human and Imperial fleets departed on a joint exploration mission. They would travel to the edge of known space and beyond. The mission would last 3 years. As the ships jumped to faster-than-light speed,